חשוב לי להדגיש, אנחנו יכולים לקיים יומיים מהבוקר עד הערב של כנס רק על הנושא הזה. אבל טוב לטעום ממנו ונמשיך הלאה. Steve, I will start in Hebrew with your permission. את פרופסור סטיב אורטיז הכרתי כבר לפני 35 שנים, כשהוא הגיע לחפור עם ביל דיבר, אחד מבכירי הארכיאולוגים האמריקאים, בתל גזר. כיום סטיב משמש כפרופסור באוניברסיטת ליפסקום, והוא יחד עם גם כן שותפי בעבר, סם וולף, מנהל כבר הרבה מאוד שנים חפירות מחודשות בתל גזר, והוא יציג את הרצאתו, האם גזר שייכת לשומרון, נחלת אפרים, כפי שאנחנו יודעים מהמקורות, או ליהודה. כל מי שמכיר את האזור שואל את עצמו, איך אומרים בגשש, מה עושה שופט אשכנזי בכיוון של הרקיע, מה פתאום גזר היא שייכת לשומרון, כי היא כל כך חלק מהמרחב של יהודה. אז זו שאלה מאוד מאוד מרתקת, אני חושב שסטיב הראשון שמתמודד איתה. Steve Ortiz is the director of the newly established Lanier Center for Archaeology at Lipscomb University, where he is also professor of archaeology and biblical studies. He is the principal investigator, co-director, along with Sam Wolf of Tel Gezer Excavation Project, and the co-director, along with Itzik Shai, שיגיע אחריו, at Tel Buna. I invite Steve to present his talk.
I'm not like these young people with an iPad. I have to use old school paper for my presentation. I would like to thank the conference organizers as well as the various organizations that they represent for the invitation to give this paper. The Tandy Institute for Archaeology Excavations of Archaeological Excavations at Tel Gezer were under the direction of myself and Sam Wolf. We dug for 10 seasons from 2006 to 2017. The publication and analysis are now under the LCA, the Lanier Center for Archaeology, when the archaeology program got kicked out of Texas and we moved to Tennessee. I'm not bitter about that. We have published overviews of our excavations and we continue our progress in our final publications. The excavations were located on the southern part of the Tau on the western hill, focused on the eastern slope toward the central saddle. The excavations were designed to unite the Iron Age architectural elements and cultural horizons of the HUC excavations with our renewed excavations. To date, the Tandy excavations have defined 14 major strata. This afternoon, I would like to focus on the Iron Age and attempt to address an underlying question in regards to Gezer. Who does it belong to? Part of the issue is the ambiguity we have in the biblical text. Most scholars have attributed Gezer to the Ephraimites based on the biblical text. The first excavator, McAllister, associated the site with the Ephraimites, as well as the Hebrew Union College excavators, Deaver, Wright, Lance, et al. Also, biblical scholars such as Naaman also proposed that Gezer was the southernmost border town of the northern kingdom of Israel in the Iron Age 2B. This view has been adopted by most archaeologists. This view is not based on the archaeological data per se, but the biblical text. There is one exception, the infamous Yadin connection with the six-chambered gates and Solomon. Now, I am not going to get into the textual traditions of which text belongs to the northern traditions versus the southern traditions. I'll leave that to the biblical scholars. I am pointing out that when Gezer, or when archaeologists and historians draw a border, Gezer tends to get assigned to the north. Ironically, I have not found any robust discussion on why Gezer does not appear in the Danite territorial list. Deaver, Lance, and Wright summarized the views of Gezer in Gezer Volume 1, 1969. they proposed a historical reconstruction based on the current views at that time and associated Gezer with Ephraim. They also attributed Iron Age I Gezer as under the auspices of the Philistines. And they attributed the northern valleys of the Shvelah, the Sorek, and the Arlon valleys as conquered by David, postulating that although David was strong enough to conquer Gezer, David left Gezer because it was under Egyptian hegemony and guarded by the Philistine vassals. In their view, Gezer eventually became an Israelite possession as a gift from an Egyptian pharaoh. This association with the north is also carried out in their ceramic analysis, as seen in the stratigraphic chart and chronological ceramic phases of Gezer III. Gezer has a mid-8th century destruction attributed to Tiglath-Pileser III, and I think this also caused them to associate Gezer to the north because it was associated with the fall of the northern kingdom. Now I will discuss our excavations. The earliest major occupation layer excavated by the LCA excavations dates to the 13th century BCE. The elite status of this building is indicated by the large size of the home and the finds, including both scarab and cylinder seals, jewelry, and gold leaf. This building was destroyed at the end of the 13th century BCE by the Egyptian pharaoh Moneptah in his campaign into Canaan. The LCA excavations found evidence of this destruction throughout the building, including the remains of an adult female and an adult male and child who died inside the building during this attack. And this report will come out soon in a forthcoming IEJ. This building was partially rebuilt as a single room building, evidenced by new floors and features and some new walls and entrances that were blocked off. This is an ephemeral phase that did not last very long. In the Iron Age I, the city layout in this area changes quite a bit from the previous stratum. We have evidence of 3 major phases. The first phase, stratum 11, consisted of 2 buildings utilizing a common wall between them. Both were incorporated into the city wall. Gezer's city wall at this stage was not impressive. This 2-course wall ranged from 0.75 meters to 1.5 meters wide and was also used as an exterior wall for multiple architectural units. The western building consisted of at least 3 to 4 rooms. The entrance to the west, as you can see the pillars in our bulk, all rooms contained a typical assortment of pottery, bowls and craters, cooking pots, storage jars and jugs, as well as grinders and worked stone. A best figurine and chariot holder were found in Unit D. This room also contained a lamp and bowl deposit. Room A contained several installations, 2 small circles measuring about 0.5 meter in diameter and likely used to hold storage jars, and 1 small stone pedestal or table in the southwest corner. This room includes bowls, cooking pots, craters, jugs, and at least 3 storage jars. Other finds include flint, tabloonware fragments, spindle whorl mortar fragments, several pounders, and several metal objects. Room 2 contained sherds of cooking pots, storage jars, craters, and jugs, and some bowls, along with a Cypriot import. Other finds include flint and worked stone object. Room 1 was not excavated to stratum 1 because it was too high for us. The eastern building consists of at least 7 rooms. We have a similar picture of ceramic and stone distributions of artifacts in the western building, i.e. flasks, craters, chalices. Room B had a well-preserved plaster surface and appears to be a designated work area. Installations include sunken store jars, stone-lined bin, and we also found a lamp and bowl deposit, as well as a jug foundation. And which leads to the uniqueness of stratum 11 for the amount of stone foundation deposits found in about half of the rooms. One of the unique deposits was found in room B of the eastern building. It consisted of the typical 2 bowls and a lamp, but one of the bowls was unfired, and there was also a chalice in this deposit. Another unique find was a large pit in room F. This pit contained storage jars and a lamp and bowl deposit that sat on top of the storage jars in the pit, perhaps some sort of favisa. The next stratum was a continuation of stratum 11, which changes to the two structures. A remodel combined the northern half of room D in the western building with rooms B and C of the eastern building forming one long pillared room, thus creating a new plan for the eastern building. At the western end of this pillared room was a raised platform, and at a later period, the area of this raised platform became a separate room. The northern part of the western and eastern building of stratum 11 became a street with structures built north of the street, and these structures were not excavated. Stratum 10A was destroyed, with evidence found in almost all rooms. Ceramic finds include stored jars, a large multi-handled crater, decorated craters, chalice, bowls, and a juglet. Other finds included a bronze blade, spearhead, as well as a six-toed figurine fragment and a rattle. One of the unique finds were these mushroom-shaped stoppers. One of them contained a seal, and this seal is identified with Siamon. In summary, both stratum 10 and 11 were built directly over the late Bronze Age patrician house, illustrating this area of the city contained domestic structures from the Albi to the Iron One. These strata were contemporary with the granary and other courtyard houses found in the Acropolis by the HUC team. Our houses fit the plans of other contemporary patrician houses of the southern Levant. In regards to the Philistines, we have minimal amounts of Philistine pottery, no Philistine one. We have the bichrome and some monochrome, but also the Philistine 3, as you can see here in these photos. Enough to postulate engagement with the Philistine polity to the south, but not to define this as a Philistine city as my Dr. Father Deaver proposed. Now, Solomonic Gezer. In stratum 8, we have a totally new city plan in an administrative quarter next to the six-chambered gate. This, with the rectangular courtyard administrative building and monumental flagstone paved stone surface to the north. And here you can see an artist's reconstruction. The pavement started from the plaza courtyard of the gate and went westward up the slope of the western hill. To the west of the administrative building, we have new buildings constructed over the destroyed stratum 10. Domestic structures. Note the street in stratum 10 continued to be used in stratum 8. Now, I skipped stratum 9. We know how to add and count. There was just an ephemeral stratum 9 squatters' residence constructed utilizing remains of stratum 10 buildings, and it was just a single building between these two major phases. Dating of this stratum is based on ceramics, red slip, Philistine 3, lapidou ware, cooking pots, black juglet, as well as our robust C14 dating. This administrative building or palace belongs within the tradition of these multi-room central courtyard buildings that have been published elsewhere. Evidence for this destruction was found throughout this building, which we date to the Shishak destruction circa 925. The nature of the settlement in stratum 7 greatly shifted. Directly built on top of stratum 8 was this new city plan with domestic buildings. We have isolated 5 units built directly over the stratum 8 administrative building, as well as the other buildings to the west. Most of these domestic structures utilize walls of stratum 8. This stratum also ended in a destruction. The stratum 7 assemblage is very similar to our stratum 8, and our C14 dates, mostly taken from unit D, place the dating closer to stratum 8. Hence, it was not particularly long-lived, as the site once again fell prey to a destructive event near the close of the 10th century BC or early decades of the 9th century. One of the issues in defining stratum 7 is the nature of the household. A recent dissertation by one of my students examined these domestic units. These are not the typical 4-room houses. They are best described as segmented houses. Faust has discussed room flow of the 4-room house versus other plans and proposed the uniqueness of the 4-room house in its egalitarian access, illustrating in his terms an Israelite ethos. The center plan is our stratum 6 four-room house in the next stratum. For those who have visited Gezer, this is the four-room house that's reconstructed on the site. We postulate that the ruling polity abandoned the city and a new cultural element moved in. It is possible the Gezerites rebuilt their city, but why would they have not kept the same city layout of stratum 8? It would seem more reasonable to assume that the local population in the region, either the Arlan Valley or the Sorek Valley, repopulated Gezer in stratum 7. Now we have a gap in occupation between stratum 7 and 6, basically the 9th century. And stratum 6, also we have a brand new rebuilt building. Casemate city walls are used along with the 4-chambered gate. There is also an administrative quarter of 3 buildings. Hence, the domestic quarter of stratum 7 goes back to an administrative quarter just like we find in stratum 8. The domestic quarter is moved up north, where I discussed this four-room house. Our four-room house is nearly twice the size of those that were found by the Hebrew Union College excavations that are off our plan here. Our four-room house contained pottery from Phoenicia, coastal plain, and Judean. You can see the lamellic jars here. This stratum was destroyed by Tiglath-Pileser in 734. My colleague Sam published an article where he supports the Northern Association, i.e. Gezer belongs to the north. I prefer to think that the reestablishment of the city probably belongs to Uzziah as he expanded Judah to the south and even toward Ashdod. Now, I want to place the excavations within current research. The Shvela is one of the most investigated regions in the southern Levant. There have been several studies on sediment patterns focusing on the longue durée from the Albi to the Iron Age, shifting borders, ethnic, cultural, or political, and patterns of state development. Faust and Koch each have independently proposed that the Shvela was densely settled in the late Bronze Age, experienced a hiatus during the Iron One, and then it was resettled in the 10th century to its height in the 8th century. Others have proposed that the resettlement did not start until the 9th century after the wane in Philistine dominance. Another trend is the Canaanite enclave theory, which postulates that there was a concentration of Canaanites who occupied the Trough Valley in the Shvela during the Iron Age 1. Proponents of this theory note that there was a pattern of sites that do not exhibit the cultural markers of either the Philistines on the coast nor the Israelites in the hill country. Archaeological investigations have shown that the Philistines occupied the southern coastal plain within large urban centers, and Gath was perhaps the largest. The Tal Safi project just concluded the last season, 2021, and the results have greatly informed the geopolitical boundary between the coastal plain and the highland polities. Gath became a roadblock to any westward expansion of Judah into the Elah Valley and dominated the central Shvela. Hence, scholars have considered the Shvela as a middle ground between these shifting polities. The excavations Kirbet Kayafa also had a major influence in current debates on the transition between the Iron I and Iron II. These excavations have revealed a previously unknown Iron Age fortified city dated to the Iron Age 2A. The excavators have proposed that Kayafa is a fortified city built under the auspices of a centralized authority in Judah. Most would concur with this conclusion, although there are some who have proposed that the centralized authority is farther north, i.e. King Saul in the Gibeonite region, while others have proposed that this site belongs to the Philistines and represents an eastward expansion of their territory into the hills. The Kirbet Kayafa excavations have greatly shifted the debate regarding the development of the state. Now the state has shifted back to the early Iron Age too, but it is not David, it is Saul. Naaman proposed that Benjamin was part of Judah throughout the monarchical and early periods. Israel Finkelstein counters Naaman and proposes that Benjamin belonged to the northern Israelite polity. He again, with Fantokin, incorporates the fortified city of Kayafa with Saul in the northern polity, located on the Benjamin Plateau. Omar Sergi contested the reconstruction and proposed that the emergence of state was also the Benjamin Plateau, but the seat of power of this polity was located in Jerusalem. He uses evidence of the stepstone structure, which according to him must have incorporated the population of the Benjamin Plateau, especially for labor. He also notes that Jerusalem was the seat of power already in the late Bronze Age. Now, pulling this all together, some of you look confused with all this data, like this monkey here. Just in summary, Sam and I have already discussed our motto of Gezer within the current Iron Age research in the region. We have concluded that Gezer would have been associated with the Canaanite enclave in the Iron One, and in the late 10th century, it became part of the westward expansion of the highland kingdom of Judah. We postulate that it was part of Judah in the late 10th century, a further westward outpost, but it was also possible that it could be Benjamin expanding down the Iron Valley. Biblically, Gezer was associated with the territory of Ephraim and later listed as a Levitical city. Archaeologically, however, its affiliation is more complex. It was a major Canaanite city-state, remained Canaanite into the early Israelite period, according to biblical tradition. It shows evidence of Philistine interaction or influence, and later became a part of an Israelite Judahite administrative system. In the late 10th, early 9th century, the administrative quarter went out of use and became domestic with the construction of segmented houses, in which the brief occupation was destroyed, possibly associated with the biblical tradition of the northern and southern kingdoms fighting for boundary expansion. Gezer was abandoned for most of the 9th century and was rebuilt into a robust city with the renewed administrative quarter west of the gate complex. This would have been built sometime between the 734 destruction, and you have the two theories of the excavators. This is either part of the north or part of Judah. So thank you.
Thank you. No questions.